Hi, good morning. We're reading The Mystery of History. It has been a while. We went on a couple field trips, so we are back and we're on page 78, looking at the Lewis and Clark expeditions. And this was as a result of the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. Okay, sorry, we sang that last time. Thomas Jefferson recruited Meriwether Lewis. I remember that these names were there was Meriwether Lewis. Who was the other person's name? Oh, Zebulon Pike. There's a place called Zebulon in North Carolina that's close to where I used to live. So Jefferson and Lewis, this is Thomas Jefferson and Meriwether Lewis, they together chose William Clark as second in command. But Lewis privately promoted Clark to co-leader of the expedition. Both men had experience with the wilderness, which they were going to need, and they picked 43 recruits to join them on their trek. It must have been exciting and terrifying to be a part of their team. I would say so, because they're exploring a part that they have no idea where they're going. There's no map. Like, we should probably
take this route. They're not holding up a phone saying, Siri, activate alarm if lost.
Yes, that's true. So, the men planned to follow the Missouri River in the Louisiana Purchase and the Columbia River from the Oregon Territory. Sometimes I say Oregon, sometimes I say Oregon. So that they could reach the Pacific Ocean. In between the rivers, they would have to climb the rugged Rocky Mountains by way of a well-established Indian trails. I'm wondering how they knew that these American Indians had trails through there. The round-trip journey of 8,000 miles started in St. Louis, Missouri. That was on May 14th in 1844. Lewis could not believe the number of animals that he saw on his trek, especially the number of buffalo, which roamed in herds of 3,000 or more. What an awesome sight that must have been. The group also encountered grizzly bears. That's a no. Which are good to eat, but dangerous to meet. That rhymes. By the time the expedition was over, Lewis and Clark described in their journals seeing 122 or more different species of animals and all sorts of plants and trees. They wrote extensively about fighting swarms of gnats and blood-sucking mosquitoes, which plagued the men to near madness. Yeah, I think I would have been like, I'm turning around. This is it. I'm done. Or I would have caked myself in mud. I would have put mud all over me.
Why?
Because they can't bite through the mud. Or can they?
Would you get down deep in it?
I would have scooped it and smeared it all over myself. They also complained of the prickly pear cacti that tore at their feet and scraped their legs. On a brighter note, in the area now known as North Dakota, the expedition met up with the friendly Sioux Indians, and later the Mandan. Cruise too loud. Lewis and Clark built a fort near the Mandan village and stayed the winter there. While there, they met a French-Canadian trader named Toussaint Charbonneau. Toussaint Charbonneau. You may never have heard of Toussaint Charbonneau, but I think you may have heard of his wife, Sacagawea. She was a teenage Shoshone Indian, now well known to most Americans. Not long ago, the $1 gold coin was created in her honor. The baby on her back is the only child ever depicted on a U.S. coin. Sacagawea was a valuable friend to the members of the expedition. She contributed to the team by translating between other American Indians and Lewis and Clark. She traveled with her infant son, Jean-Baptiste.
Jean-Baptiste?
Like John the Baptist. Sacagawea, by her presence as a young mother with the expedition, also helped lessen the fears that American Indians had of newcomers. Having no previous contact with Europeans, most American Indians considered these newcomers foul-smelling and unusually hairy. They didn't have deodorant, and they're big men getting through the wilderness with few showers. So They did not smell well.
And they were not clean. I used the first scent of the forest.
To remember that you can't just, hop over to the hotel and go clean up.
Or call somebody and they can give you some soap. Or
you have to
look up where's the nearest hotel.
You have to find a river, basically. I mean, they were following the river, so I don't know. I guess it's also probably laborious to get undressed and get in the river and take a bath. I don't know.
How would they take a bath without soap?
You just do. You just get in the river and let the river wash all that stuff off you. They probably had some type of soap. Toussaint traveled with the expedition too, serving as a guide in the areas that he knew. They traveled by a large keel boat as far as it could go until the Missouri River narrowed. Then they scaled down to canoes and sent the keel boat back to St. Louis to report on their progress. I wonder how they did that. They had to pull it upriver. Deep into the Rocky Mountains, those who kept going west met up with the Shoshone Indians related to Sacagawea. The tribal chief was Sacagawea's brother, whom she had not seen in a long time because she had been kidnapped as a child and raised by the Mandan. It was a tearful reunion, and the Shoshone helped Lewis and Clark navigate through the mountains using horses. I was wondering, because she was a very young wife, so she was kidnapped as a child. The Rockies were the hardest part of the trip because the paths were steep. Many a horse fell to its death along the way. Oh dear. After a month of hiking through the mountains, the expedition reached the Clearwater River and the Snake River.
And guess who's on the back of that horse?
Well, I pray that they were able to. I don't know, if it was that steep, they probably weren't riding the horses. Because if it's so steep that the horses are having trouble, most likely they were walking alongside. After all those miles... New canoes helped them reach the Pacific Ocean before winter. After all those miles, can you imagine the thrill of seeing where the ocean greets the west coast? The rocky shore was clearly the end of the road. Lewis and Clark built Fort Clatsop on the coast and spent the winter months there. By March 1806, when did they start out? In 1804? Yep, they started in May of 1804. Now it's March of 1806, so it's been 2 years out in the wilderness. It was time to turn around and head home. Lewis trekked one way and Clark went another to see which might be faster. I would not have split up. The two parties met up again in August and traveled home together. I imagine there was a lot of storytelling on the last leg of the journey. Lewis had encountered the Blackfeet Indians, who were not friendly, and Clark encountered the Crow warriors, who stole some of their horses. There was much about life and the land for these new Americans to learn from the first Americans. All right, Zebulon Pike. I think we can read the rest of this because this is the end of this little part. I've one shorter story to tell you about the Louisiana Purchase in the Spanish territory that lay beyond it. In 1806, Thomas Jefferson commissioned another guide to go exploring. It was Lieutenant Zebulon Pike. He also started his journey in St. Louis, but he headed west to seek the headwaters of the Arkansas and Red Rivers. And where did that lead him? Straight to the Rocky Mountains. You might already know the famous name for him. In the state now known as Colorado, Zebulon Pike and his team gazed up upon one mountain that was higher and a bit more majestic than the rest. And this is what we now know as Pike's Peak. Here's a picture of it. It's beautiful. I used to see it every day. This is Miss Hobart talking. Every day when I lived in Colorado Springs. The expedition attempted to climb the mountain, but was unprepared for the conditions and had to abandon the effort. Zebulon Pike's journey would not end as easily as Lewis and Clark's. When Pike and his team wandered into Spanish territory, which was in New Mexico today, they were captured. They endured a few months of captivity in Santa Fe, but were released to travel home through Texas. One of Zebulon Pike's favorite stops was the little town of San Antonio, Which
San Antonio.
Yes, which was growing with Spanish Texans as two cultures merged together. A mission called the Alamo is in San Antonio.
The Alamo.
Yes. It would later be a historic battleground between Mexico and Texas, but we'll get to that in a few more weeks. As for the Louisiana Purchase and those who explored it, it was a big deal. The United States grew faster than most expected. Pioneers like Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett blazed new trails and opened up the western frontier. On the heels of this expansion was the Industrial Revolution. It was exploding in Europe and the United States, making everyone and everything move at a faster pace. There were inventions like the cotton gin, the steamboat, and the steel plow. They were pushing mankind further along than imagined. The 1800s had arrived full of energy. All right, we're going to stop there. We'll pick up next time on page 82.